From Studio 1A in Snowflake Village, you're listening to Pod Bless Kentucky.
All right, welcome to the show. And this week, we're recording on August 22nd, 2017. And we have been in the Trump administration for how long? Dana?
Around 213 days. He was inaugurated 286 days ago. Or elected 286 days ago.
Oh, my.
Oh, my life. I mean, like, seriously, how long is this going to last?
You know, I feel like every day something happens that maybe we get a little closer to the end, but I also think that just means that their tolerance grows. I mean,
Very
for
true.
bullshit.
All right, well, I'd like to welcome you to the show, and this is Pod Bless Kentucky, and we have had a very it's been a little bit of a break since we've last recorded.
Yeah, I go on vacation and you all wuss out and not be able to do it on your own.
Yeah, I know. It's just not the same
I'm
without
not sure.
you.
I was going to say, I'm just not sure that Tom and I could keep the same dynamic up.
It would be two drunk people sitting around going, yeah.
Yeah, we miss Honey.
So we're glad to have you back.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot has happened since we last recorded. I mean, we've had some terrible tragedies. The tragedy of Charlottesville and everything that happened there is just, it's horrifying to think that this can happen in our world today. I mean, the white supremacists, I mean, we've always said this kind of thing would never happen again, and here it is again.
Well,
go ahead.
no, I was going to say, well, we do have free speech here. That is, a fundamental right that we all have. And that means you've got free speech with the government. It doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for what you say.
Well, and I do want to add in that, in Tom's statement, that we said it would never happen again, and it's happening again. It's actually never stopped happening.
Yeah.
And you can point to other countries, and yes, there's genocide in other countries, and it never has stopped happening. But really, the hate in this country has actually never stopped happening. And as much as we repeat never again, we're missing some aspects of that never again. But to me, it more is not never again so open. I think that's what I'm looking for.
Well, it's
just
blatant.
so blatant.
Right. They feel emboldened to be able to
Right.
come out of the shadows and, step into the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, they felt so emboldened that they were actually able to get an HBO series, the Vice News, to actually follow them around as they were on the University of Virginia's campus and to this Unite the Right actual
do you think
event.
Vice picked, and this is going to sound horrible of me, but do you think Vice picked the whitest little girl they could possibly find to do this interview and to follow them around on purpose?
I don't know.
I think she kind of thought, hey, this is the way I can get out there and get her voice heard. I mean, she picked a hell of a story.
Oh, yes, she did. I just wondered if it was done out of protection for their own people.
I mean, if you haven't seen the Vice story, basically it starts off and it has these Jews, or these gentlemen who are these big hulky guys, and they're marching through the University of Virginia's square, and they're chanting, "And you will not replace us." And
Jews
then it turns
will
into,
not replace
and
us.
then they start going into Jews, you will not replace us, and it's something that just very, very eerie as they march through the square with these tiki torches. I mean, that's not very intimidating, but it's still. I mean, they're brandishing torches through the square.
They're carrying flame. I mean, they're carrying fire.
Well, I don't know if you've ever worked with a tiki torch before, but those are bamboo.
Right.
And if you've ever gotten whopped with a bamboo stick,
It hurts.
not that I've ever been hit with a bamboo stick, actually. Actually, yes, I have. But just because we were fucking around and shouldn't have been. But still, they hurt. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
end would easily go through somebody if it's slightly sharpened.
So there's giant irony we learned this week. Here in Lexington, Kentucky, we held a candlelight vigil for the young woman who passed away in Charlottesville due to violence, due to the right driving a vehicle, through a crowd of people.
40 miles an hour.
Yeah. And we were very fortunate to have the rabbi from Temple Adath Israel come and speak. And Rabbi David is great. And I'm never get his last name right. So
Wirtschafter.
And fortunately, he's got a good sense of humor about that. But he was very quick to point out, just in case anybody doesn't know the numbers, that Jews represent 2% of the U.S. population and 0.2% of the world population.
We're not replacing anybody.
No, he joked that they can't even, Jews can't even replace themselves. So, he made that, he was trying to lighten the mood a little bit, and I don't blame him for doing that, but he's very serious in terms of, there's no mass domination, plan in effect here. Everyone is just trying to live their lives as normal people every day. And so, but, anytime someone sees someone as successful or, somehow they choose to focus on that so they can try to heighten what they consider their disenfranchisedness. Is that a word?
The scary thing is there's hate groups right here in Kentucky.
Yeah.
There's actually 12 hate groups that dislike Jews, African Americans, and LGBTQ groups. And and then we have record sales. We have hate record sales right here in Lexington.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a scary thing. And I did not realize one of the largest propaganda outlets for these white supremacist groups was right here in Louisville. The Daily Stormer is...
What?
Yeah, the Daily Stormer is right out of Louisville. And this is the Daily Stormer.
What do you do for the Daily Stormer?
I am a feature writer. I do the crypto report, and I'm generally their man on the ground at events.
So, what do you hope to get out of today? Like, what does it mean to you?
Well, for one thing, it means that we're showing to this parasitic class of anti-white vermin that this is our country. This country was built by our forefathers. It's sustained by us. It's going to remain our country. We're stepping off the internet in a big way. For instance, last night at the Torch Walk, there were hundreds and hundreds of us. People realize they're not atomized individuals. They're part of a larger whole because we have been spreading our memes. We have been organizing on the internet. And so now they're coming out. And now, as you can see today, we greatly outnumbered the anti-white, anti-American filth. And at some point, we will have enough power that we will clear them from the streets forever. That which is degenerate in white countries will be removed.
That's one of the scariest things I've ever heard.
Well, and the giant irony in the fact that he keeps saying that everyone other than like him is anti-American. He represents anti-America. They use the Nazi flag, the Confederate flag as their symbols, which two losing flags we might, throw out there. But those flags are everything that America doesn't stand for. We don't stand for those things. We sent people to fight against that, in two different wars, and it gets my gut that they just say that kind of shit. It's like, that's also fallen into the lines, though, that if you protest, you're anti-American, so,
Yeah, this gentleman from the Daily Stormer wasn't the only one that was, featured.
But is it really out of Louisville?
Yeah, it was out of Louisville. Well, it was shut down this week, the actual website, and it is actually out of southern Indiana, Louisville area.
Well, the other thing is that in Kentucky, that's really, really funny because this is one of the whitest states in the union.
Oh, yeah.
We are way white. It's above 80%, if I remember correctly. I'm not going to get the numbers right. I don't know what the date on this is. But.
They were figuring that about 300 white supremacists, KKK, all these white groups were actually going into Charlottesville for this Unite the White or Right group, and they obtained these permits over a month ago, and tried to use that as we're doing the right thing, and the probably on this Vice News article or actually show, they had a guy named Chris Cantwell, and he has become the white supremacist pop celebrity, I guess.
Is he the little whiny bitch?
Oh, yeah.
I looked it up, by the way. Kentucky's 87% Caucasian.
Yeah.
87%. I'm betting you, with the exception of maybe some place that's got more cows than people, or, I don't know, maybe Vermont. I don't know. I mean, we are white, y'all. I mean, and that's a problem, too. It means that a lot of people don't step outside their own, and experience diversity either. So, and that's fueling these hate groups rather than helping.
Not only that they take advantage of people when they're down and out. I mean, we saw earlier just after the beginning of the year in Pikeville, where the Traditional Workers Party, and we'll be talking about them in a little bit, and how they went in there and they tried to play on the fears of the election, and they played on the people not getting their, not having high employment rates. And they started saying, okay, this is because of the minorities and the Jews, and these are all the problems that are causing this.
Shout out to all 2 Jews that might possibly be in Pikeville still.
Very true.
I mean, come on.
Now, as I said, the big star of this Vice News program was Chris Cantwell, and this is his claim to fame for the week.
Off the top of your head, you can remember Dylan Roof's name. You can remember Tim
whether
McVeigh's
white
name.
people were capable of violence.
I didn't say capable. Of course we're capable. I'm carrying a pistol. I go to the gym all the time. I'm trying to make myself more capable of violence. I'm here to spread ideas, talk, in the hopes that somebody more capable will come along and do that. Somebody like Donald Trump, who does not give his daughter to a Jew.
This was his 5 minutes of fame, I guess.
I can't keep up with these white supremacists. Do you like Donald Trump? Do you not like Donald Trump? You guys want to let us know? Email us.
No, don't let me know.
Well, I don't know anymore, because it seems like they're, part of his constituent base, but... then this guy comes out and says, no, because Ivanka, married a Jew and converted and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, they love Donald Trump because they think he is backing him. David Duke,
But they just don't appreciate
the previous Grand Wizard of the KKK, who has ties to
here
Lexington.
in Lexington. He has a buddy here.
He has a buddy here.
A lot of these guys do have ties to our area. So it's kind of scary.
Well, and the other thing, too, is I found it really funny, especially after some of these people have been outed for being at these rallies and things like that. They come back and go, well, I'm not a white supremacist. I just think the statues should stay where they are. Dude.
And I was just carrying a Nazi flag to help him out.
Yeah, I wasn't doing anything.
If you lay with dogs, you get fleas.
Exactly. You show up to one of these rallies, you're a fucking racist. Yeah. That's what it is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And you know where you're going and you know what you're doing. So don't try to lie your fucking way out of it and just act like it's no big deal. I'm sick of this crap.
If you're standing next to some guy holding a Nazi flag,
you're a Nazi.
You're a Nazi. And like you said, a lot of these people have said, "Well, I'm not really," what
the hell year is this, people?
Or they're trying to. Well, that's part of
you
their
would
playbook.
think 1937, right?
Yes, it's like none of us were alive in 1937, but holy fucking shit, if I had to take a wild guess of what people in our position were doing in 1937. They were having the same discussion.
Oh, I guarantee you. And I would like to point out, I wish you guys could see what's going on. Sonny's crying. So, this is a big deal. Sonny doesn't cry, not in front of people.
No, it's scary as fuck.
All of this apologetic stuff that they're doing now, it's such bullshit. And it's such by the playbook. Because they know that, incite violence, they get, and then all of a sudden when the law enforcement gets involved, then cry fake alligator tears. And
I have to admit, it is slightly satisfying to see them on the ground in handcuffs going, I didn't do anything.
Well, Chris Cantwell, Like, okay, Mr. Big and Bad.
Yeah,
we just
he
heard.
was funny.
Yeah, I mean, he had some interesting things to say. Like once
I want to be peaceful. I want to be law-abiding.
Oh,
Okay, that's the
fucking
whole
shit.
entire point of this. And I'm watching CNN talk about this as violent white nationalist protests. We have done everything in our power to keep this peaceful. You know?
get him a hanky.
I know we talk a lot of shit on the internet, right? But like literally, Jason Kessler applied for a permit like months ago for this. Okay, when they yanked our permit, we went to the ACLU and
Oh,
we went
boo-hoo.
and we won. And they just won't stop, you know? We have done everything in our power. We have used every peaceful and lawful means by which to redress our grievances. And our enemies just will not stop. What
Yeah.
options
Dude.
do we have left?
Okay.
Dude, let me tell you, we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop because you are not in the right. I don't care how much free speech you have. You scream hate, we're going to scream it louder to get you away. We're going to drown you out. You are not going to exist anymore. You can go back to the fucking shadows and slink away back into your hole and sit there quietly and just expire because I'm done with this bullshit. I've had enough. I just can't handle anymore. Yeah, you've got free speech. We all have free speech. That doesn't mean there aren't consequences for it. Maybe not legally. And you know what? And I actually do believe the ACLU was right to fight for them. That's their job. That's a
Right.
civil liberty that we all have to speak our mind. That doesn't mean you don't bear public outrage. You don't, that you're going to deal with public opinion after that. And,
Right.
because that's the position you've put yourself in.
You have the right to speak whatever you want,
That's right.
but you have to face the consequences.
Well, and it may not get you arrested for what
Right.
you have to say. And that's even up in question because, we
Chris
do have
Cantwell's
hate
getting
speech.
arrested because he used actual pepper spray and tear gas.
Well-
and he actually committed a assault on someone, and they had documented footage.
And he did not have a open carry or concealed carry. Is it concealed carry permit?
There's
Yeah, he
both.
didn't have a concealed carry. And
Because
Yeah.
Virginia is like the
bragging.
only state that does not do the reciprocal.
They don't acknowledge the agreements of other states for concealed carry.
Right.
So I would say I want everybody to picture this for a minute. So you got a bunch of white men who come out, and women who come out not only with assault rifles and with their handguns and everything else. A lot of them are in riot gear, which means they are gearing for a fight. I don't care what you say. I have yet to see protesters on the other side of the fence come out in riot gear or with guns. And they come out knowingly, to intimidate people. Imagine if they weren't white and they were black or they were Hispanic and they were out there carrying assault rifles screaming down with whites. What would happen? All of their asses would be in jail. They'd find a way to arrest
yeah.
every single one. So I'm
If
sick-
they didn't just mow them down.
well,
with-
exactly, with a gun,
with guns.
or with whatever. My point is, I'm so tired of the double standard that white men are allowed to intimidate, and a cop will talk them down, rather than immediately arrest them. When if they were of color, they immediately go to jail.
So Sean King is really.
I love Sean King.
He's on Twitter, and he's actually from Lexington. You knew that?
I did not.
He's
I
actually
love
from
him.
Lexington.
If you don't follow him on Facebook or Twitter, you really should.
You should. He's an amazing activist. But he is pointing out he's one of the people that's like, $20,000 reward for the guy who beat the hell out of DeAndre. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Oh, the
just
guy
lost
in
the
Charlottesville that was beat,
Right.
had the shit beat out of him. It was at a parking garage,
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
it?
Right, and so they have very close-up photos and very easily identifiable people. These people, the people that beat the hell out of him, you can identify them. Anybody on the internet can look at those photos and say, oh, yeah, I know that person. And yet the police are not actively after these guys.
Now, I will say, too, in Charlottesville, they knew this was coming. And if you do a lot of reading behind the scenes, the people who live there have known this was coming and have lived underneath some, almost like they're in a hostile territory. They have felt very, I'm trying to use the right, in terms of that they were hostage in this situation in terms of because the white supremacists have been there for a while, and it's just.
Well, last night, I wish I had
frustrating.
a recording instrument with me that I would have been. I had the opportunity to speak with someone who was at the event at Charlottesville during the event, and he was telling me that, I mean, Charlottesville is a lot like Lexington during the school year. When the university's in, they have the police force, but during the summer, they become a very small town, and their police force really shrinks. And so when this was coming, they thought, oh, well, something like what Pikeville had, where they only had like 150 folks came out to protest, and they thought, we'll be able to handle this. They had no clue the amount of protesters and the white supremacists that were coming. When they did, they still didn't have the manpower to actually do all of the work. And when they started moving everybody around, once they realized how many people were coming, they wanted to move them away from the statue to an alternate park. And then the ACLU got involved, and they got to stay right where at the park. And what happened was there were so many people, and you had these counter protesters who were there, and they were trying at another park when the alt-right folks, the supremacists, didn't have room. They got pushed back, and then all of a sudden they started conflicting. And then you had the Heather Heyer incident, where the gentleman, and from his accounts, he was telling me there is no possible way that this gentleman should have been accused of manslaughter. This is actual murder in the first degree. Yeah. He sat at the top of a hill with no one around him, and the way they were saying, from 30 to 50 feet around the car. Unlike Chris Cantwell's kind of his little thing that he said on Vice News of, they were beating on his car and he had no choice just to get away. No, this gentleman revved the engine, and then he took off at 40 miles per hour through a very busy street.
Are they calling it vehicular manslaughter, or are they calling it manslaughter? Do you know?
I don't know.
I'm not exactly sure right now.
Well,
but really, if you even watch the video, there are
I've seen a couple
such disturbing videos, and you can see it from a distance back, and you can see that people are turned around and they're looking at this car revving its engine, and then all of a sudden they just start running.
Well, and I think, isn't that one of the tenets for being charged with murder, is intent has to be in there.
Right.
Manslaughter is accidental, usually. And
he had intent.
He had intent.
And the sad thing is, if you watch the video, and I never noticed this, that he actually runs over a woman. He runs her over, and then when he backs up, he runs over her again.
Drags her a little bit.
Drags her a little bit. So, I mean, that is, and he almost got away because he had intention to actually getting to the freeway. However, his car shut down.
Well, that's what happens when you get human guts in your car.
Right.
You know?
And so after this happened, after the Heather Heyer incident, then the governor declared a state of emergency, and that all groups were to leave the city, which then that allowed all these folks kind of to interact with each other because there was no way of cordoning them off from each other.
They lost their control of chaos.
And that's when the situation in the garage happened. And I mean, it's just horrible all around, and it saddens me that this happened. And it's kind of sad because, and there's such a huge reaction. I mean, the world saw this, and
it's leaking over into Lexington. I mean, one of the initial issues in Virginia was about a statue, and we've got some statues here that
that had to come down.
John Hunt
Morgan
and
John C. Breckinridge.
Yeah,
and it was actually on the Today Show.
Yep.
And this is what they said on the Today Show.
This morning, a growing number of cities across the country are bracing for far-right rallies like this one in Charlottesville. From Boston to San Francisco to Lexington, Kentucky, where white supremacists are fighting city officials who plan to vote tonight on a resolution to remove 2 Confederate statues. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying their message of hate and bigotry are not welcome in Kentucky and should not be welcome anywhere in America.
We will engage in peaceful legal demonstrations throughout America's cities, becoming more active than ever.
Self-proclaimed white nationalist Matthew Heimbach helped organize the Charlottesville rally and is planning one in Lexington.
We're standing up for white folks that deserve a voice.
Richard Spencer, speaking on Israeli TV, says the movement has grown since President Trump's election.
All right, so after that came out, you had a situation that came up that the mayor, like they said, in Lexington, had the city council working on a proposal to remove 2 statues from Cheapside Park. And those statues are the John Hunt Morgan statue and the John C. Breckinridge statue.
And for those of you who don't know, so let's talk about just the name Cheapside. Dana didn't realize that Cheapside, we've called it Cheapside. It's our marketplace.
Well, there's one in London. It usually just means a marketplace someplace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it's used several other places.
So our Cheapside, however, is actually named, if you look at the streets, you've got Upper Street, you've got
Short Street.
Short Street, and then you have the actual marketplace is Cheapside. So our Cheapside is, you had Upper Street was where the better slaves were sold. This is
the more physically fit,
the more desirable.
The more desirable slaves, probably the women that were the best breeding women, I would guess. And then you had Cheapside, which would be Short Street.
Well, you had Short Street where you would get young people who were just about ready to be able to work in the fields and would be a good purchase.
So,
but in a longer
children
time.
and
the children,
adolescents.
But then children and women who no longer could bear, lame men, they were sold at Cheapside.
Yeah.
Which was whichever side that happened to be was Cheapside.
Well,
and
Cheapside was the second largest, right?
The second largest
slave market
in the country at the time.
Well, and Kentucky wasn't technically a slave state, but it was kind of
border state or something.
We were not part of the Confederacy, and we were not part of the Union, but we were considered a slave state. We did.
We didn't secede.
We didn't secede. Right. We were not part of the Confederacy.
So essentially,
we were the facilitator. Is this correct? Is that the way I understand Kentucky is? We facilitated the slaves going both ways.
Not exactly. We did have slave trade. People did own slaves within the Kentucky area. The thing is if they could get to the Ohio River, generally above the Ohio River, you were considered free. Now
that didn't mean that they couldn't come and get you.
Yes.
And they did.
Yes, that happened quite often. And I mean, in Lexington, we were a very torn city. I mean, John Breckinridge actually fought against his cousins, and he had family members who fought for the Union while he was fighting for the Confederacy.
Yes. I don't think most people, if they even walk by those statues, know who they are. These statues are on the grounds of Cheapside. It was at one time a historical... it was the courthouse, right?
It did have a history museum in the old courthouse. And when it was an actual courthouse, it had a military museum in it. And then it also had a African American museum. Of course, that was before.
That makes it 100 times worse. I didn't realize that.
Well, they both were housed inside the old courthouse.
How can you have an African American museum and then have 2 men who were blatant, supporters of the South, immortalized there in statue?
Well, they used that, and they actually promoted these monuments were actually out there as part of the museum.
Well, the irony is that the Hunt Morgan house is right down the street. I mean,
Oh yeah.
And that was something you had mentioned at some other point in time, I don't even think on this broadcast, that why not just grab the John Hunt Morgan statue and throw it in to the front yard of the
the Hunt Morgan house. Yeah, I mean,
because it doesn't change the scenario.
No, it doesn't, because it really is.
They still have to walk past that,
Right, absolutely,
and see that hurt.
Well, the thing is
that and the statue's absolutely huge.
It's huge. It would dwarf the front yard.
Yeah, it would dwarf.
It's bigger than the house.
It probably, practically. The point is that these were erected essentially in a historical context, but also to remind people of color of their place in the world.
Right.
That most of these statues throughout the United States went up during Jim Crow.
Yeah.
And it was very much...
The Breckenridge statue went up and was erected in 1887, and I think
And
the
his
John
was
Hunt Morgan
1911.
was 1911.
Wasn't Breckenridge done more, not justifying this, Breckenridge was done more because he was actually a vice president of the United States?
I believe so. And
Or
he
was
was
his strictly, isn't
I
he
mean,
he was a statesman. He
was a statesman. He was a senator here. And even after the war, he did have some accomplishments. I mean, the railroad tracks that R.J. Corman uses now, and most of the railroads that go through Lexington are because of John C. Breckenridge. I mean,
again, not defending this guy.
No, not at all. I was going to say, I don't know if there's... So an argument that my friend used to defend these statues was that you can't define people by one event in their life. And I'm not going to argue that here nor there, because we've all done things that we regret. It doesn't matter. It's what they symbolize. And let me tell you, if you're white, you don't understand that. You can say that you do, and you can spout, utter crap that comes out of your mouth in some ways to justify keeping those up. It's because of history. It represents my background. Blah, 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 blah.
Hitler was a great artist, too.
Oh, he was a shitty artist, but yeah. But the point is that if you're white, you do not understand how a black person feels when they walk by these statues on the grounds where
many slaves died.
And not just mention probably people they are related to.
Yeah, especially in this area.
Yeah.
So let me give you guys just a really quick story on that. That one of the guys, there's actually two, but one of the guys at the city council meeting, it was a black gentleman, and I apologize, I wish I remembered his name, but he worked for many years in one of the office buildings that overlooked Cheapside.
Mm-hmm.
And when they started a renovation of one of the buildings years ago, some younger black gentleman came up the stairs to him. He said he looked all shook up. He said, "Dude, what's the matter?" And the guy said, "I have to take you downstairs. You have to come with me. You have to see this." And the gentleman walked downstairs with this younger man and all the way down, and I don't know what you guys know about Cheapside, but on the one end of it, there are old cells. There's tunnels underneath it.
Of the old courthouse.
Of the old courthouse. But there's these cells underneath, like way down. He said he went down into the bowels of Cheapside. And because these things had not been touched, they had not been disturbed. And, during this particular thing, the renovation that they were doing, there were still shackles.
Oh.
And he said he's never felt anything like he did there. He said, all of a sudden I knew why this guy was all shook up and could barely breathe. There were shackles still there, chained to the walls. And he said, I knew that my ancestors sat down there waiting to find their fate. They sat down there waiting to know who was going to buy their kid, who was going to buy their wife. And if that didn't make that city council vote, shame.
Yeah,
Well, I will tell you, Breckenridge's great grandson,
yeah,
got up and said he'd They can go, you know. No one is.
Both of them did.
Both of them did. No one is saying that the statues need to be melted down or destroyed. The large thing is, you learn from history in museums. You know, put them in a museum. There was a large contingent. Both Hunt Morgan and Breckenridge are buried here in Lexington.
Yep, in the city cemetery.
In the Lexington City Cemetery.
Yeah, and there was a big movement. What makes more sense than to go drop the damn monument where they are buried? You know.
Well, there is a problem with that,
right?
And,
there is.
And
there is.
Years ago, not too long ago, back in the 90s, when everybody started buying their plots in the Lexington Cemetery, and we lived in a time of abundance, and people wanted to have the largest monument, and they actually had to put regulations of how large of a monument you can have in your grave area. And if they move these statues into that area, those monuments then become part of their estate and part of their gravesite. So that would break the rules.
Does anybody else give a shit? Because I certainly don't.
That's very true. I mean, I think that the cemetery would be a great place, and I think that
I know a park was considered here. You know,
Veterans Park.
Because
the neighborhood.
No, the neighborhood has an issue with it.
Right.
And I'm not in
understand.
agreement with why the neighborhood hasn't. The neighborhood, they said something about it's going to bring violence to them. That's not even. I don't even see that as the problem.
It doesn't
Are
change
these guys
it.
veterans?
Yeah,
not really honorable veterans.
Right, but you don't want to. I mean, they were classified as veterans.
As veterans by the U.S. government. Yeah,
by the U.S. government. They are considered veterans, and you really don't want to put something out there that people are going to destroy. And I think that's the problem I have with keeping them in the exact location they're in.
Really, the only logical place they can go is into a museum.
Yeah, because, I mean, the old courthouse is going to be repurposed.
Right.
It's going to be turned into shops, and it's going to be turned into a restaurant. And do you really want these statues to be out front looking like something outside of a P.F. Chang's restaurant?
Well,
I mean,
I've heard a lot of people say, too, that we're trying to erase history. No, what you've got up isn't all factual either. You're not telling both sides of the story. You're saying this guy was a great leader and everything else, and I'm not going to say whether that's true or not true. You know, I'm sure some, at some point in their lives they did very good things. Breckenridge, way more so than Hunt Morgan. Look him up.
I mean, he was the vice president of the United States
Breckenridge,
before the Civil War.
Breckenridge, Colorado. I mean, he wasn't he wasn't an all bad dude. No, Hunt Morgan, not a good guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy that got fired, right?
Yeah, he's the guy who got fired from the Confederacy and did some things. He way overreached.
Yeah, he actually stole. I mean, he looted. He raided and pillaged without permission through Lexington, through his own people here.
Yeah. Question. You guys are saying without permission he raised and looted.
No, he raided.
The way it worked.
You could
Mr.
get
I used to teach history.
Yeah.
No, what it was as a in the Confederacy, they were allowed to go take 10%.
Yeah,
and everyone's farms,
and they had to have permission through the Treasury to take.
Yes.
Before they said okay, you go into this town, you can have.
So kind of like what Attorney General Sessions wants to do again.
Possibly.
Well,
I mean,
so have you seen
to a
Gone with the
different
Wind?
extent.
Have I seen what?
Gone with the Wind.
Yes.
Okay, when the Yankees were in Atlanta when Sherman came and burned Atlanta.
Right.
It's along that he had permission to do a lot of what he did by the Union Army. I mean, the point is that
there was
everything. Most of what they did, not all, most of what they did was sanctioned.
Yeah, there was actually a Union general or a commander. I'm not sure if he was a general, but he led a troops. His name was Spoons Jackson, and he actually went through, and that was his nickname. And as he went, nobody names their kids
Maybe he
Spoons.
blamed the Spoons.
But
I don't know.
Actually, you want to know how he got his name?
Yes.
Going into New Orleans on his way,
He kept eating
south,
soup?
No. Basically, what he would do is he would go through New Orleans, and all the silver that everyone would have, he raided it. He would take everyone's silver.
Well, a lot of people didn't because it was silver. It was worth money.
So why wasn't he called Silver?
Because he kept it all. He kept all people's silverware, and so
that made more sense. They would have kept just the spoons.
No.
That's what I'm saying. Why didn't they call him
But
Silver?
they called him.
But anyways, whatever.
They called him Spoons Jackson, and I mean, it was one of those things.
Knives. No, I guess none of those
No.
make sense. Spoons makes the most sense.
Silver would
It was
make the
bad
most
because,
sense.
Pie server.
as
you know?
as he went through
we'll
New
quit.
Orleans, the actual people of New Orleans would throw their silverware at him.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Oh, I would totally whip a knife at somebody.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. No,
So-
not really. I'm just
Would
kidding.
you, would you cut a bit?
But John
No, I
Hunt
would cut
Morgan
a bit.
actually pillaged through the city of Lexington.
Right.
And people that he, knew. I mean,
took their shit?
Yeah.
Well, and there's a lot of this whole 10% thing that they were supposed to say, so they could keep the army supplied and fed and everything else.
Yeah, and
They-
turn it over to the Treasury.
Right. They largely rated people who didn't have the income too. They left a lot of the other people would pay their little bit of a fine, or it's not necessarily the same thing. It devastated people who.
So not
Oh,
only
yeah.
did they secede from the Union, but they did exactly what they said they weren't going to do in our Constitution, in the real U.S. Constitution, by seizure and forfeiture during war or something like that. Isn't
It's
that
not
in there?
quite the same
Right.
How is that not the same?
because it's set at a standard. It's set at a
Well, they-
percentage.
And with our Constitution, they won't take it from our
won't take
soldiers won't take
everything,
it from us. They won't. You won't
Right.
have
So
to.
what?
But what they were doing.
A soldier cannot enter your home and take it for himself.
Right.
There is a fine line of a difference.
Or
Nah.
they can't go into your home. They could go into the enemy's home and take whatever they want. And that was the case because there were certain parts of Lexington and Kentucky that were considered northern. And so when the Confederacy went through, they were like, "Oh, you're the enemy, so I'm going to take your stuff."
Okay, maybe we need to get back on track because
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is going to turn into a huge. history
I've turned
lesson.
into Civil War
So
history.
no, so the real thing is that these statues represent a lot of really bad things, and if you're white, you can't understand it. So stop saying that you do. You don't. And I mean, you can say you empathize. I had someone tell me that hate is learned, and I do believe that. And she was trying to justify that you can't assign something feelings, and I think that's real easy to say when your relatives and ancestors weren't bought and sold. I mean,
And this is a hot button issue
Very
throughout
much.
the country. And Mayor Gray took a stand, and he said, right in the middle of Charlottesville, said, Lexington's not going to do this, and we're going to actually remove these statues.
now let's be very clear. He's been working on it for a couple of years.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
because we have heard a lot of backlash on that. Well, why would he announce it right then? Because it was on the docket.
Yeah.
For
To come up Tuesday.
It was already
During the working
there, so
meeting.
he was saying, "Hey, you guys." Now,
Let's batten down the hatches.
so
kind of
I'd
thing.
like to bring our illustrious governor into this. In 2015, Matt Bevin ran as
Fuck, Bevin.
I've been waiting for
You
it.
knew I
all
had to
night.
do it.
Matt Bevin ran on it was appropriate to take these things down and put them in museums.
Well, yeah, specifically the General Lee,
In
who is
Frankfurt?
in Frankfurt. Yeah, at the rotunda in Frankfurt.
Well, guess who's changed his position?
His little tune.
now?
No
His tune
way.
is, can you believe now? He says we shouldn't take them down. And not only does he say that we shouldn't take them down, he says the reason all of this is happening because what? We took prayer out of
the
schools. Yes, somehow he managed to make it a religious issue when it's got nothing to do with it. So, if we could drink every time Matt Bevin did that, we'd be dead. I mean,
Very true. So, like I said, the mayor actually made a statement, and here's what he had to say.
And my decision to relocate the statues was made only after weighing and considering what you've had to say. I routinely say that our city is a welcoming and caring and giving community. These are our shared core values. At the foundation of all things that are good about our city. Another core value we share is an appreciation for our history. It's a long history, stretching back to 1775, 242 years ago. Yes, we like knowing where we came from, but we also need to know that our history is accurate and truthful. The Civil War was a dark and tragic time in our nation's history, and yes, we need to remember it and not erase it, but we also need to explain it accurately and truthfully. The statues that stand on our old courthouse lawn today also stand on sacred ground, the Cheapside auction block. Before the Civil War, Cheapside was one of the largest slave auction sites in the South. Historians say from the 1820s until the Civil War, Lexington was one of America's largest slave markets. So let's think about it. It's just not right that we would continue to honor these Confederate men who fought to preserve slavery on the same ground as men, women, and even children were once sold into a life of slavery. Relocating these statues and explaining them is the right thing to do.
So, I mean, like Dana said, this came about years ago by a gentleman named DeBron Thomas. And I remember when this actually started.
I do too.
Because, I mean, it was right during the beginning of the Black Lives Matter. And there's this African-American gentleman who all of a sudden, in the middle of Thursday Night Live, pulls out this large cardboard, well, not even a poster board.
It wasn't even large, hon. It
yeah.
was maybe a 10 by or a 12 by.
And it said, "Take back Cheapside."
Whatever.
And everybody there, I mean, mostly white folks were like, okay, great. We've got a Black Lives Matter guy who's doing this. And you know what? As he was explaining things, yes, some people were yelling at him. And you know what? Some people were like, wait, he's right.
Yeah.
I was like, because shortly after that, someone actually defaced the Breckinridge statue and spraying BLM, Black Lives Matter, on it. Well, they cleaned up, and within 24 hours, there used to be a small marker that actually explained the Cheapside history.
Right.
And within 24 hours, it was also defaced and removed. And it never came back.
I remember, I'm very grateful for when we moved to Lexington 5 years ago, we went down to the farmer's market, and where we parked, you know, you guys know that when you come down there on a Saturday morning, you got to park a little bit and walk.
Yeah, you got a little bit of a trail to go.
Yeah, and so the very first thing we came to was that placard, and we stopped and we looked at it, and I don't know how anybody else responds to you know, stuff like that, but I sat there, and I tend to look at every historical marker that I run into, and I read it, and I stood there for a few minutes before I moved on, thinking, well, I'm glad it was acknowledged, you know, because a lot of these things happen in history, and you
just
never
get swept under the rug.
It just gets swept. So the fact that, and it even said it had a dark history. I remember that, you know, being part of it, that it was just, if y'all can remind me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm making it up, but, you know, but I like the fact that they acknowledge the fact that bad shit happened here, you know, and we're owning it. We're not denying it. We're not pretending it didn't happen, you know. We're owning it, and we're putting this here to say, you know, this is what happened, and people, you know, people were sold here, and that's important. And so, I know, it makes me kind of physically ill, honestly.
People sold, just, ugh.
Well, I mean,
I know.
And the crazy thing is DeBron Thomas, he didn't give up.
No.
I mean, when people were saying you should give up, you're fighting a losing fight. You're not going to get anywhere with the city council. You're not going to get anywhere with the mayor's office. You might as well just give up. And he didn't.
No, he did
not. And he persisted. And you know what? It came the time.
Did you see his face when it came, when the
announcement came through?
When all of them voted unanimously, and you just saw not necessarily a wave of relief, but a holy shit, it happened, and you just saw him break. I mean, it was just not a break in a bad way.
No, in a good way.
But in a definite good way.
Well,
an exhaustion. I mean, of all his hard work, finally came to fruition.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was,
and there's still hard work to be done.
No,
yes,
it's not
there is.
stopped.
But the first hurdle was crossed. It was to get the city council to say, yeah, we're okay with them being moved. They need to be moved.
And now they have 30 days to find a location where to move those statues.
I will say this won't cost the taxpayer of Lexington's anything.
Not one single dime.
So none of your taxpayer money is going to anything. It's not coming out
So
of a
to
budget.
those 3 racist assholes in the city council meeting that all they could do was bitch about how much it was going to cost them and how it was ruining history. Fuck you all.
No,
it's not going to cost you
It's
a
not
penny.
going to cost you anything because someone has volunteered to move them for no cost. And that is a great expense to them. These are not light statues, you know?
No, they're going to have to be removed with a crane. I mean,
Yes. And so it's going to be an ordeal. Streets are going to have to be shut down. It's going to be a thing, as my kids say. And I mean, I'm not even sure who volunteered to do that. Whoever you are, bless you for doing that. Thank you so much because you eliminated the argument that was going to be used to keep them there.
One of
the 147 million arguments that they were going to use to keep them there. So what's the next hurdle that they have to go through?
So they have to find a location for these statues. And once they find a location, and there have been a few things that were thrown out. Originally, they talked about moving into a Veterans Park, and that just ended up being a bust because the neighbors there had just did not want them. They complained that it might interrupt their view of their brand new splash pads that they put in. And, I mean, if there are people who really do care about these statues, and it seems that there are, I mean, you want to put them in a place where they'll be respected.
Okay, so one of the people at the city council meeting that respects and wants those statues saved is a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, blah, 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 whatever. I really don't care about his opinion in this. I mean, I'm sorry, but if that's how you respect it, as being a traitor.
Well, I mean, okay. So, I mean, there are those folks who believe that you have to see it to believe it, and they want to keep these statues. So, with that said, they can not move them to Veterans Park, which they've already said that is not a possibility anymore. There is a possibility of moving them to their resting places at the Lexington City Cemetery.
Which means we're going to have to change all kind of ordinances and crap like that in order to get
I
them
wonder
there.
if they can, and I was thinking about this before, I wonder if they can do a grandfather clause. If those statues, well, no, seriously.
If you died before,
but if those statues were erected before that particular ordinance was put into place and that person was buried before that particular ordinance went into place.
That could be a possibility.
Why could it not be a grandfather clause?
I'm just picturing somebody, I've had this American Eagle in my backyard since my grandpa died.
Prove it.
Right. If you can prove it.
Yeah.
Prove
it. Now there were some other options that were put out there. Now, some of them are viable, some of them are not. I know one was recommended by the Breckenridge Foundation, and that was to have the John C. Breckenridge split off from John Hunt Morgan. They would have to part ways, and Breckenridge.
After they've been in love for so long.
Well, they're buddies. They've been hanging out and for a while, and so John Breckenridge would then, at least his statue would go to Frankfort because of his accomplishments as being a statesman, a senator, vice president. I mean, he did stuff for our wonderful state, and I mean, he actually, even within the Civil War, I can give him a little bit of credit because he was the one who actually talked to Jefferson Davis and said, okay, it's over. And said it's time. And Jefferson Davis had to actually recognize that.
So why didn't Black Lives Matter, and this is not, I'm not meaning to be racist and rude and whatever, it's a legitimate question. When they freaking named that bar that ended up folding after about 2 years where every wealthy white person and their brother went to, the Jefferson Davis Inn. Why? My God, why didn't somebody flip out about that?
Well, the Jefferson
Why
Davis
doesn't
Inn,
that surprise
me?
you? No, I'm just kidding.
It had some history here in Lexington, and
it's a beautiful building.
Yeah, the new building was great. I mean, and the old Jefferson Davis Inn was a pretty popular place, and I'm not sure exactly why they didn't have a problem with this.
I mean, like, because I
and
even had a problem
They
with
may
it.
have had a problem with it, and it might have just something that we haven't heard about. Because, I mean,
like, my kids and I, every time we drove past it, it was like a fun game sport to see if any person of color was sitting outside at the Jefferson Davis Inn. And it wasn't to be mean. It was more like, why?
Why is the irony
would you
here?
do this?
So,
You know, it just goes to show you how absolutely oblivious I am sometimes. I went there twice and didn't even
Never connected that dot.
never really thought about where I
Right.
was, because it was just, oh, we're having a party there. I'm like, oh, okay, food. You know, I didn't even, and that's a problem. That's why, you know,
Right.
we have to be
and,
more aware.
And as we
and-
said, a lot of people didn't even have a clue that these statues were even in town.
Exactly. Yeah, you know.
I mean, they
Except for me and my kids that would,
People are just
make fun
naive.
of other people for...
Well, yeah.
now I can tell you one
I
group.
knew the statues were there. I give
One
myself
group
that much. I
that
didn't think
did
about
know
going
that
into
the
stuff.
statues were there were the UK fraternities. They knew about the John Hunt Morgan statue. One of the interesting facts about the John Hunt Morgan statue, it depicts him sitting on a horse. And John Hunt Morgan, actually, he had a mare that he
And he's
he
on a
rode.
stallion.
And,
He's on a
and,
stallion.
and this depiction, in this statue, he is riding a stallion. Because the sculptor at the time did not feel that it was adequate that he be riding a mare.
He thought a man with big balls needed a horse with big balls.
So, the UK
It's a
fraternities, the
compensation
University
thing.
of
It's a
Kentucky,
compensation thing, I guess.
the UK fraternities, they actually turn it into a rite of passage each year to try and paint the balls blue and white on this horse. They actually there is a song that has been passed down through the years, and it goes a little something like, it is actually called The Ballad of the Black Bess, which the last stanza of this ballad goes something of this chorus. So darkness comes to bluegrass men, like darkness over them falls. For well we know, gentlemen should show respect for the ladies' balls. So,
I'm just picturing a bunch of drunk frat boys trying to paint the statue
Oh,
without
they-
getting caught by the cops.
oh, believe me, they try.
Oh my God, I know the
So-
perfect time of the day to paint the balls of this horse. Nima at Nima, if you're listening to me, we have a life goal. We
But
have
I
a
don't-
bucket list number.
It
and
just
it's
depends on if
right
they
near
keep
the top.
if they keep the statues here in Lexington or
Oh,
if
honey.
they move them out.
I'm
Oh,
thinking
honey,
that-
I don't care where those are, unless there is a gate around that statue and a 6-foot-high fence. I want to paint the balls of this horse.
You know, I'd like to do it. I don't know if it's on my bucket list. You and I need to talk about what a bucket list really is, but we have very different ideas of what a bucket list is.
It's on mine.
It's on hers.
So-
you know, I'll be a co-conspirator.
Now, after they find a place for these statues, they have to go through the Military Heritage Council,
And fuck Bevan.
well, can
which
I-
is set up by
Fuck
Matt
Bevan.
Bevan.
Okay.
Like all
does anybody else find it
committees.
hugely ironic that we can't move statues in our own damn town? I mean, I do. I find it hysterical that we have to. We are so overloaded in bureaucracy that we have to go to the state to say, "Can we please move these statues? We don't like them where they are." You know, I mean, it feels like
What's more amazing to me is that fuck Bevan thinks that he's not going to allow them to be moved.
oh yeah,
That he has more control over what happens in our city, what has been voted on by our city council, what appears to be an overwhelmingly majority of people within our city wanting to have them moved. And he has the balls to go and say, no, I don't think those should be moved. I don't understand how he has
He can't handle-
so much more authority.
Well-
he can't handle blue dots in a red state. He just can't do it. I mean,
It'll be very interesting because, I mean, if they were going to be destroyed, then he may have a case. But with many of these, because they are all military folks who sit on this committee, they generally, if you bring a good case to them, they will move. And if they're going to a respectable place and they have a reason.
And to my knowledge, no one, DeBron, anybody on Take Back Cheapside, their council, and to my knowledge, the city council, and nobody who was standing up as a public opinion, not one single person, even the gentleman I told the story about with the shackles, none of them said destroy the statues.
Everybody said
all
move.
of them said move. And most of them, both black and white, have said to a respectable place. Some place that they are correct to be. Right? I mean, nobody's saying to do anything nefarious to these statues. There's still a respect to them.
I mean,
whether I want it or not.
Like I said,
respect.
unless you want the statues to look like P.F. Chang's sitting outside front. And it's kind of sad because I look at the Breckenridge statue there, and usually it sits right outside of Cheapside Park, right in front of the Fifth Third Pavilion. And on Thursday nights, it becomes a bench.
Right.
And a lot of times people put their beer on the statue. And that's not a way. I mean,
there's no respect.
That's no respect with that. So I mean,
not that they deserve it. They might.
It's time to move them. I mean, before they are damaged. So that has been happening, and hopefully we'll hear something soon. And
they have 30 days to find a space for it. Correct.
For a space, and then. Oh, then this committee is not supposed to actually meet till November. But then they're going to actually try to have them speed up their meeting and move it to September, so they can actually have some kind of decision on this and make it final. I know that some groups are in the works for when this is final. There's going to be a great celebration for the city of Lexington. So
they're calling it the Unity Rally.
Yep, a unity idea.
Unity idea.
So,
yes. You're right. It isn't a rally. It's.
I mean, it's in the works. I mean, so once we hear more things, we'll definitely put it on our calendar and make sure everybody knows about it.
Lexington Unites. That's what they're calling it.
Right. So this group is.
I knew it was something close to that.
So, there's been other things that have been happening in our sphere, and unfortunately,
the eclipse was awesome.
Yep. And wonderful. Our president decided he was going to go and see the eclipse,
minus the glasses. What a dumb fuck.
I mean,
like, what a dumb
he looked
fuck.
at it more than once without the glasses.
3
times, and even had aides yell at him not to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe it, and I mean, but this is a man
why can't you believe it?
who doesn't. Yeah, I know who does not recognize science, and what's sad is there are other people who are defending him. I mean, and one of them happens to be our friends at Fox News. That would be Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly's replacement. So this is what Tucker.
The entire country saw at least 60% of the sun covered up by the moon. Even the president saw it, but in a move that is not a complete surprise, he looked directly at the sun without any glasses. Perhaps the most impressive thing any president's ever done.
The
if
most
you missed out,
impressive.
Don't despair. The next total eclipse in the U.S.
That's what I was
is
just
just
thinking.
7 years from now. Of course, we'll be covering it right here on Fox.
I mean, come on. I mean,
impressively stupid.
There's the
majorly
one
stupid.
thing all scientists have said as far as this eclipse: do not look at the sun without the glasses.
I don't know. Maybe Trumpy's mom and dad really taught him zero.
Maybe they dropped him on his head.
That too. But even as a kid,
Yeah.
no eclipse necessary. Mom would say, do not look at the sun.
Yeah, don't stare at the sun. Yeah.
I mean, what kind of idiot looks up at the sun?
During
not
an
once,
eclipse.
Not twice,
But
3 times.
I mean, I had the way I dumbed it down for someone was you know how when you change a light bulb or you look at a light...
That was me. You dumbed it down for.
Well, I wasn't dumbing it down for just you. No, but I used the explanation of, you know how when you look at a light and you turn away, how you see it for a while after you do that? It's the same principle, except that a eclipse can burn your retina.
Yeah.
You know, it's so dumb. I can't... And it's not like being the president gives you magical powers that protect you from the sun, you know? I mean, he wears enough bronzer, but I mean... I don't think that's going to protect him from an eclipse.
And this wasn't the only dumb thing he did this week.
Oh, he's been...
in the last 2 weeks, actually.
In the last 200 and some odd days.
Let's be honest with ourselves. Who does not open up either Facebook, Twitter, or just turn on your TV first thing in the morning and go, oh my fucking God, what did he do now? I mean, like, you don't even have to have an alert of any kind.
But within the last 2 weeks, he probably made the biggest goof that any president has ever made. When the Charlottesville tragedy was happening, and his response was one of the most horrific things any president has ever done. When he actually blamed
both sides.
Oh, and there were good people on both sides. If you fucking believe that there are good neo-Nazis and good
you don't need to
white
use the word
supremacists,
neo.
yeah, Nazis, there are good Nazis, there are good white supremacists, you know, like you said before, that's like saying Hitler was a good artist, you know, it's just, that's an utter bullshit. If you actually believe that and you're trying to drum up sympathy for Nazis, you know, go fuck yourself. Yeah, I mean,
fuck you.
Well, I just can't believe that. It's like, okay, look, you know, to give whomever, you know, yeah, sometimes people on the other side of the fence do some not so great things, you know. Most often it's done in defense, but sometimes they strike first when they shouldn't. You know, there's militant everywhere. But there's a difference between militant in protecting people and militant in hating people. You can hate a racist because you hate what they believe, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, but the fact that there are good people on both sides, and both sides were at fault. No.
There's only one bad guy in this.
Well, there's a lot of them, but not the other side.
Right. The one thing I can say is, like, other Republicans really came out against him on this. I mean, there were very few that say, I agree with the president on this.
But of that, only like 15 actually called him. 15 out of 230 some odd senators and Republican you know,
the ones that hold office
representatives, right? Only 15 out of 230 some of them called him out by name and said, "Dude, that was dumb. Dude, Donald Trump, you need to call out for what it is." And only 15 of them could do that.
Well,
which is sad because then the next day,
he
actually did call him out
in a very
scripted
response.
If you watched his body language, he didn't want to do that.
Well,
watch his body language.
It was very obvious. And then
the next day he lost his shit.
He pulled it all away and went back to his original statement.
Yeah.
I mean, which is horrible. I mean,
Well, it's like what he was saying. There's good people on both sides. There were bad people on both sides, and there are some very, very good people on the right side. It's like, dude, you're just saying there are very good Nazis. There are very good people out there who hate other people just because of the color of their skin or what religion they are. You know, there is no. How is that right and wrong?
Right.
It's just wrong. I mean.
And even Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, you know, I'm beginning to like Arnold Schwarzenegger more and more.
Yeah, me too.
And he had the balls to call out Trump. He said, you know, I know Nazis. I actually
know Nazis.
know real Nazis. I was born at the end of World War II. Like, you know, I was a year old when it ended or whatever. I don't remember the whole thing. And he said, I know these people.
Yeah.
Know them.
Yeah, he's Austrian.
And they are not good people.
Right.
And even if they might have done something good, and I think Dana has said this before with the Confederate guys, they might have done something absolutely fabulous in their lives.
And then
but it negates it.
What's really sad, and then the days following Heather Heyr's funeral,
oh my God.
and
Why is he so stupid?
He actually sent before her funeral. He said, I'm going to reach out to Heather Hare's mother. Mm-hmm. And he actually did.
During the funeral.
It's almost like, when you have to deal with somebody you really don't want to deal with, so you deliberately call them, like when they've stepped away from their desk, or they're at lunch, or or like when you're upset with your parents for some reason, you call them when they're at church, or one of those kind of things. That's what that was. He called during a fucking funeral. I don't think she's going to answer her phone,
And he says that he tried repeatedly.
Yeah, he tried 3 times and during the funeral.
Oh, heaven forbid she mourn her child.
Yeah.
God damn it, he's dumb.
And then, starting on Monday, he actually had his first address to the nation concerning foreign affairs. And he actually was talking about how, of course, just like any other Trump kind of press conference or anything, he had to make it a big reveal that he wanted to try and get everybody to pay attention.
Fucking
like
TV
he's Monty
reality.
Hall or something.
It's like a TV reality show.
That's what I mean.
All of this is not a TV reality show.
And you've won a new car. Ugh.
What's sad about this is that when the Republicans bought it, it's kind of funny. The Republicans bought into it hook, line, and sinker. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna watch him, and he's gonna pull all these." He promised that he was gonna pull all these people out of Afghanistan and get us out of there because this is a useless war, and we're just spending money there. And that's what he campaigned on until he got in front of the TV cameras last night. And with that said, we are in a never-ending war, at least without any end in sight.
So not only, when he announced it, I don't think he actually has shit as far as the plan goes.
I agree.
Because he would not announce how many more troops. He would not announce how much more it was going to cost. He would not give one single piece of information.
Now, I thought I read, this is again, our lovely investigative process here. I thought that I read it was 4,000 troops that they're initially sending
I have
over.
read an awful lot of Seth Abramson, I believe.
Yeah, that's probably what
is
I read.
one of the people who have said, yes, it's going to be 4,000 troops. But Trump, during that press conference, absolutely would not reveal any of that information.
So
sooner or later, somebody's going to point out that the emperor has no clothes.
Well, you know why he's doing this. You know why it's all very vague and why we're sending more people over there and why we're still doing this work, because he doesn't know what to do. And so he's waiting out the next 3.5 years and, and making it the next person's problem.
Well, one thing he did say is that he is going to turn over all of the decision-making to the generals on the ground and the troops in the fields. Because he said, before we used to have all the bureaucrats in Washington make all the decisions. And now we're going to give it all to the generals to make their decisions.
So basically he's asking for a blank check.
Right.
Fuck him.
Well, the Secret Service doesn't even have enough money to continue protecting him.
Oh my God.
And that's another thing. If there's been any huge developments this week, well, I don't know. There's been 2 more things. The Secret Service possibly running out of money halfway through the year because the amount of people that they have to protect for the Trump family.
Well, and it's the amount of people and it's the number of trips he's taken away. They've spent in the past 6 months $60,000 on golf carts.
I thought that was just for one particular trip.
No, I thought that was total.
Yeah, $60,000
total in the past.
Total
so that's
for
$10,000 a month for golf carts. So they can follow him around because he's got to stay protected every single step of the golf course. So they have to be in carts.
Yeah, and Tiffany has to be protected because he only sees her only on Thanksgiving. So,
well, all of them, and I'm not saying that they don't deserve to be protected because with their dad, dear God, they probably need it,
But they don't need him on large vacations.
They don't need him on large vacations. He needs to keep his ass at the White House. All of those people, if we all spent that much time away from our jobs, we wouldn't have jobs,
Very true.
So they need to stay home, and he maybe needs to think about running the country a little bit and not. And let's also point out that almost all of that money for those golf carts went back into Donald Trump's pocket because it's been at Trump facilities.
Yep, and every room that they've had to rent at Trump Tower,
Exactly.
or Mar-a-Lago, or
Here's a little tidbit from CBS News. Are you ready?
Yes.
So, Trump is protected. The number of people under Trump that's been protected has risen to 42. That includes 18 members of his family. Fine, whatever.
That's okay. Yeah. Who are the
Tiffany, I don't even know. So, for example, in June, Trump's daughter Tiffany traveled to Berlin with her boyfriend. A Secret Service detail went with her at the cost of $22,439. Nice, right?
So there are 24 other people.
However, the cost to the Secret Service for the trips, this is including Eric and Junior, they've topped at least $200,000. The Secret Service has spent $64,000 just to inspect the elevators at Trump Towers and $73,000 on golf cart rentals specifically at Trump properties. What the actual fuck?
Okay, now I would like to know, out of the amount of money that they spent on everything, how much of it is business versus personal? Because the rest of us, you travel on business, you're reimbursed by your employer, you can take it off your taxes. There's, a million, ways to be compensated for it. If you do it on your personal, it's on your dime. So it seems to me like if the Trump family is going anywhere personally, they should be paying for it and,
Well, and it shouldn't, like those Secret Service agents, so that, what was it, $73,000 in fucking golf carts?
Right.
Whose pocket is that going back into?
It's going into Trump's. That's what I mean. It's going right back into Trump's pocket.
That's so...
Well, that's why
What the hell isn't that about emollients clause?
Well, I was going to say, that's what my hope is for further presidencies around the line. Fortunately, I guess we've just been lucky enough that, past presidents have had some honor and some dignity and held themselves to a higher standard and not it doesn't say I can't, so that's okay, basically saying I'm above that because I'm the president. And whereas other presidents have honored it and said, that's going to look really shitty if I do that, so not a good idea.
Right. And the sad part about all of this is they are going to have to cut back.
Right.
Now, whose security detail are they going to cut back?
They're not cutting Jimmy Carter's, and they cannot cut... like the Obama girls, that would put them at super risk.
Right.
Somebody made a joke and said that they're going to do a 2-for-1 for the Bushes. That, the whole Bush family would be lumped and have to stay in one small area. I don't think that's funny. But
this, it's kind of ridiculous. We had that go on. And then there was one other thing that hasn't gotten a lot of news. The USS John McCain actually was... it wasn't attacked, but it did have an accident.
Its second accident.
And the actual ship's second accident?
Yeah, it's the second one. It's been involved in the summer, correct?
And they... How many servicemen were actually missing?
10.
A total of 10. And Trump's response to this was like...
That's too bad.
That's too bad.
His initial response, so when... he was getting, I guess, off of the airplane or off of the helicopter or whatever at the White House. It was he's coming home finally from wherever the fuck he was. And the reporter said, so what do you think of the USS McCain and the lost 10 soldiers? And he said, that's too bad.
Well, and has he made a public statement?
No.
I didn't think he had.
Crickets. Wait, didn't he do anything last night?
I do not believe so.
Fuck.
We'll have to check. But yeah, it's ridiculous.
This is actually, so that whole area, is that this considered the South Seas, the South Pacific Seas? That's the 4th accident since Trump has taken over.
Well, it's interesting. You have to wonder.
In that area, though.
Well, you have to wonder if, maybe, I don't know anything about destroyers. I don't know anything about their security. I don't know. I know nothing.
Okay, time for the disclaimer.
Yeah, these are our opinions. These are not fact. We're just going off the cuff here and what comes
A few
into our
people
brains.
sitting around drinking beer and having discussions.
That's right. I'm wondering, since it seems to be happening in the same area, if there's some type of way to jam something.
That's actually a lot of people's curiosity.
Okay.
Because it is in the correct area that North Korea could be jamming signals, Russia could be jamming signals, or Russia's cronies. I don't know what else to call it. Yes, they're allies
in this area.
could be jamming signals once in a while. Because didn't Dumbass give away where some of our destroyers even were,
Right.
their paths and stuff like that to Russia at one point in time?
And one other thing he did, when it came time for when Mr. Putin, Vladimir, said, okay, it's time to get rid of some U.S. Envoys over in Russia, basically what was Trump's response?
Okay.
Oh, you just saved us some money. Thank you. He thanked.
He did think, and then he tried to say it was just a joke, but
Yeah, no.
I will say that he did tweet thoughts and prayers with our Navy sailors aboard the USS John McCain.
But he also tweeted best regards to the people hurt during Charlottesville. I mean, like...
Yeah, my favorite is that he typed H-E-E-L instead of H-E-A-L.
Heal will heal.
Will heal. And it
We
made
will
it
heal.
sound like we would be crushed under their boots rather than get better.
Or that we're all
Now,
dogs on leashes.
There has been one other protest since Charlottesville, and that was last Saturday in Boston. And Trump's little tweets got a little ahead of themselves. He started claiming that, oh, look at these people who are these anti-law, the anti-police people. What a shame. And he tried to shame out these people who were confronting these Nazis. And come to find out, there were 50,000 that came down on a group of Nazis. And there was a very small group. So, I mean, he had to eat his words later.
It's like 150 or something.
Yeah.
They actually have aerial videos where they show all of the protesters, and then they show, not the protesters, but the counter-protester folks, and then they show this little itty-bitty band of people standing in the
I have
center.
seen some awesome tweets that says, yeah, he doesn't know how many people are there because that's about the estimated size of his inaugural crowd. And,
Well, that kind of does it for this week.
Well, I have
we have one more thing.
One thing. So, just like Sonny said, I get up every morning and I check Twitter and I check Facebook and everything else. And yesterday, it actually pains me to have to say this, but being the moderate of the group, I will. We are all on a huge, campaign to get rid of Mitch McConnell, and I wholeheartedly support that. And I'm an advocate, a very much an advocate of it. He did say something, which considering all the shit that comes out of his mouth.
Oh my God, you agreed with him.
I did. I had to agree with him on something yesterday where he did say that most news is not fake news. And the fact that Republicans have been playing up fake news so much, I actually had a small smidge, tiny little dust mite of
So basically, you're saying Mitch McConnell's heart grew 3 times that day.
I don't know, 3 times. Like I said, I give him a dust mite's worth of respect, or a mustard seed respect, because it's good. Even no matter who you are, we need to combat all of this fake news shit. So, I barely lift my glass off the bottom of the table to tip it towards you. McConnell, because
she put her fingers on it.
That's right. I touched my glass for you, Mitch McConnell.
Touch your glass.
But I still stand
Mitch,
by ditch Mitch.
Yeah, ditch Mitch.
Ditch Mitch. Yeah, that too.
So, all right, that does it for this week. We're gonna take us out here with a song about the eclipse, and from our great friend Roy Zimmerman, and it's called "There Goes the Sun."
Little darling, the streets are full of neo-Nazis. See 'em snarling, I'm pretty sure they're off their meds. They're parading with the stars and bars and tiki torches, demonstrating They got a point, it's on their heads. There goes the sun. They're blocking out the sun, and I say it's alt-right. I've been thinking that the Republican Revolution is just Lincoln rolling over in his grave. There goes the sun. Civil War rerun, I say it's alt-right. Scum, 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 here they come. Scum, 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 here they come. Keep resisting, we won't let ignorance defeat us. Keep persisting, the Klan can't stand the light of day. Then here comes the sun. We'll say, here comes the sun, and we'll say, it's all right. Make it all right. Let's make America great and let love eclipse hate.